Good morning from day 5 on the Georgia Loop. I am just leaving Woods Hole Shelter right back there, and I am heading out on the half a mile, basically 0.4 trail back to the AT right now. So let's talk about Woods Hole. There is a privy here and there is a bear vault. Again, you do need a bear canister to stay here between March 1st and June 1st, even with the bear vault. But it is outside June 1st, and so I'm fine to stay here with my Ursack. So I camped there last night with 2 other couples who tented. I slept in the shelter. The mice are very active in that shelter, everybody. I yelled at them several times throughout the night. But it was a lovely stay at Woods Hole. The water source here in mid-June is not great. Thank goodness I have a scoop. I was able to scoop water out of a pool and get 3 liters. It took, a few minutes to scoop all that, but that's what I did. So I had plenty of water for today. And then on today's docket, everybody, I did so much yesterday. I'm so proud of myself. It was a really hard day. I did like 16.6 miles to get here from Cooper Gap yesterday and climbed, I don't know, 3,500 feet or something like that. It was a lot of climbing, especially at the end, climbing up most of Blood Mountain. So that means that today I only have 1.1 miles to go on the AT up, climbing to the Duncan Ridge Junction. So I'm not climbing all the way to the top of Blood. I'm gonna turn left at the Duncan Ridge Trail. I have a mile to do downhill on the Duncan Ridge Trail back to the Coosa Backcountry Trail. And then I have about 3¼ miles once I get back to the Coosa Backcountry Trail down into Vogel State Park where my car is. So all things said and done, I have about 5½ miles to do today. So I'm getting kind of an earlier start. It's before 8. And I am already on my way. That's because I stayed in the shelter. So, downside of the shelter is there are mice. Upside of the shelter is that you don't have to break down your tent and roll all that back up. I don't know why, but that just seems like a overly burdensome chore sometimes, and it felt that way to me last night. So I stayed in the shelter. Anywho, I'm heading back to the AT now. Then I'm gonna climb my last mile, and I will show you where the Duncan Ridge Trail Junction is. And I'm super excited to wrap up my 63-mile Georgia Loop hike today on day 5 with a relatively easy 5½ miles. 1.1 mile of that will be climbing, and maybe a little more because I'm kind of climbing out on this shelter trail now. So maybe 1.6 of it's climbing, the rest of it's going to be downhill today. All right, come along with me, everyone. Okay, I just wanted to show you this. This is the stream, the water source here. And as you can see, it's dry down here. Coming into the shelter, you'll see this water sign, and it says water's that way. So actually what you do is you go up, way up there, essentially really close to the source of the water, and then you can find the water. But like I said, it's scoopable only, as it's not, certainly not running down this way. But I'm sure at some point of the year, or maybe after a big rain, you could just get water right here on your way into the shelter. All right, I am on the AT northbound, back where that camper is. That is where the shelter trail turns off. And I'm going north, Nobo. And here is the junction with the Freeman Trail that goes this way around the base of Blood Mountain. That trail is covered in poison ivy usually this time of the year. And it's super technical and rocky. Very difficult up and down the creek bank, up and down, up and down, up and down. And there's no water right now. One of the couples told me because they took the Freeman Trail in last night. So anyway, I'm climbing Blood Mountain again. Climbed like 4.5 miles of it yesterday. And now I've got another mile to climb up to the Duncan Ridge Junction. If I were going to the top of Blood Mountain from here, I think it's like 2 miles to the top. Anyway, all right, I'll show you the Duncan Ridge Trail when I get there. It's a beautiful morning in the woods, everybody. Okay, Slaughter Creek is running a bit much better than the Woods Hole Shelter water source. Flame azaleas on Blood Mountain are in full bloom today. So pretty. So pretty. Woohoo! There it is, the Duncan Ridge. I made it. Huzzah. It's right by this big rock, everyone. Here's the sign. Okay, so if I continued that way on the AT, I would get to the top of Blood Mountain headed northbound, and I could go over the other side to Neal's Gap. But I am doing the Georgia Loop, so I am turning left on the Duncan Ridge. And all my climbing is done, everyone, for the Georgia Loop. So let's see, I've gone 1.34 miles and I've climbed 521 feet this morning. Now I have 1 mile downhill on the Duncan Ridge Trail, back to the Coosa Backcountry Trail. And then I have, I think, 3.25 miles on that, back to the car at Vogel. Woohoo! All right, and I know the Duncan Ridge this time of year is going to be very overgrown. So if I hit some super overgrown thorny spots, I will show those to you all. Yay! I am super close to completing my Georgia Loop hike, everyone. I'm so happy. This was a hard loop, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the variety of it. So let's recap. Since it's day 5 and my last day, and I'm going downhill and I can talk without being out of breath. So day 1, I started at Vogel State Park. I hiked up the Coosa Backcountry Trail to where it intersects with the Duncan Ridge Trail. I showed you that in my day 1 video. I also showed you that Duncan Ridge and Coosa Backcountry Trail are concurrent for a while. Up until almost the top of Coosa Bald. So I hiked all the way to Mulkey Gap on day 1. And that was about 15.5 miles or so. Day 2, I got up from Mulkey Gap. I climbed a whole lot of mountains. I climbed Aiken Mountain and Clements Mountain. Those were pretty tough and super thorny. And I ended up, well, I climbed Buckeye Knob, and Tuwani. Oh, look at these really pretty mountain laurels, everyone. Let's see if I can get a shot of them. Yeah, flame azaleas and mountain laurels today. Okay, I camped at Toccoa River, night 2. That I thought was going to be like a 16-mile hike or so, and it turned out to be a little over 17 miles. That was a really, really long day. Then the next day, I left Toccoa River. I climbed up to Bryson Gap, I think, where I had lunch, and that was a huge climb. But anyway, that day, I ended up finishing the Benton Mackay and the Duncan Ridge, and I camped at Hawk Mountain Shelter. And that was night 3. Day 4, I left Hawk Mountain Shelter. I climbed all the rolling trail that morning and up and over sassafras, and a huge thunderstorm was rolling in, so I bailed at Cooper Gap on the other side of sassafras. And I'm glad that I did, because that storm was really bad. And a couple weeks later, I'm back and continued day 4. I hiked from Cooper's Gap to Woods Hole Shelter, where I stayed last night. And today I'm just doing like 5.5 miles back down to Vogel. So that is how, that is the recap of my loop. And I showed you I showed you all the camp spots on Duncan Ridge and all the water on Duncan Ridge, because there's not a whole lot of videos out there. So if you're interested in that, definitely watch my day 1 and 2 videos, and some of day 3 to see that. And now I just have 1 mile left of the Duncan Ridge, and then I have fully completed the entire Duncan Ridge Trail, something I've been wanting to do for many, many, many years. All right, it's overgrown now. Ay, ay, ay. All right, I'm almost done though. I will check in with you. I told you on day 1 that if you walked up the Duncan Ridge towards the AT, like point 2, there'd be 2 little step over trickle streams. So when I get to those, everybody, which will be right before I get to the trail junction with the Coosa, I will show those to you so that you can see what those water sources are like. I would definitely bring a scoop if you plan to get water from either of those 2 sources. And it's mid-June, so they may or may not be running, but I'll show that to you when I get there. Overgrown. And over my head. Ooh, and thorny. Ah, Duncan Ridge. I wouldn't mind your overgrownness if it wasn't all briars and thorns. Okay, I think that this is the second one, but it seems to be dry right here, but I bet if you walk upstream, you might be able to find something, and I'll show you where the second one is. All right, and here is the first one. This one has not failed me. Let me show you. Right here is a good little flow. I would recommend a scoop, but it's mid-June and this is still flowing. It'll work in case you need it. And I'm like 0.1 from the trail junction that way, which I'll show you in just a second. So this is flowing today, everybody, mid-June. Woohoo! There's my trail junction. I have officially completed the Georgia Loop, everyone. Hooray! So you may remember on day 1, I came up this way on the Coosa Backcountry Trail to the junction with the Duncan Ridge Trail. I went up this way and I said in a few days I'd be coming back from this way. So I just came back from this way and now I'm gonna go back down the Coosa Backcountry Trail to Vogel. Woohoo! I have finished the Georgia Loop. That is so exciting. And now I just have about 3¼ miles back to the car, all downhill. Yay! Okay, just like that, I'm back at the Bear Hair Gap Trail. This is where I took my first break on day one. And I know that from here, it gets really steep going down. So pretty much all the way back into the park boundary. All right, there's the blazes for the Coosa Backcountry Trail and the Bear Hair Gap Trail. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons to starting the Georgia Loop at Vogel State Park. So let's start with the pros. If you want to do the Duncan Ridge Trail first, like I did, it's a great way to access that part of the loop and start there, number one. Number two, it's a shorter distance to start from Vogel and climb up to Duncan Ridge than it is to start like at Neal's Gap or the Byron Reese Memorial Trail and come up the other side of Blood Mountain and down to the Duncan Ridge. And another pro is I get to end my loop with this beautiful, beautiful hike through the Blood Mountain Wilderness into Vogel State Park and then through Vogel State Park. Lots of cascades, lots of flowing water. So beautiful. All right, let's talk about the cons of starting at Vogel State Park. So firstly, there is the daily parking fee of $5. I have an annual pass that I purchased for $50 to all the Georgia state parks. So I didn't have to pay. So I didn't have to pay the parking fee. I just put my annual pass up. So I would say that could be a con for some people. It's also a very difficult way to start the Georgia Loop because you're starting with extremely steep climbs. But on the other hand, that could be a pro because you're warming up for the Duncan Ridge Trail, because I would say it's probably as steep as some of the climbs on the Duncan Ridge. So the con is just starting with the steep climb and the parking fee. But other than that, I think Vogel is a great choice to start your Georgia Loop hike. And I hope that my videos have inspired you to give it a shot. I'll show you a little bit more as I get back into the park. Woo, some blowdowns. Okay, I just entered Vogel State Park boundary. So I'm out of the Blood Mountain Wilderness. Down there's the Pioneer Camp that I told you about on day one. I'm gonna cross this little creek and head back to Vogel State Park where my car is parked. Friends, I just finished the Coosa Backcountry Trail portion of my hike, I am back. That was my approach trail to the Duncan Ridge Trail. So I have finished the Georgia Loop. Now I have finished my approach trail and I'm heading back to Vogel State Park parking lot. It has been quite the adventure on the Georgia Loop. And I hope you enjoyed coming along with me on my adventure. Well, friends, I've done it. I'm back at the Vogel State Park proper. I'm at the road and I'm just gonna walk down about a quarter mile to the parking area where my car is parked. What a delightful loop the Georgia Loop is. Really enjoyed my time out on the Georgia Loop, and I will definitely be back to do it again. But here I am, and now I just have to walk, sorry for the swinging, about a quarter mile down this way, back to the car, and let's see what my watch says. Okay. I have hiked today 5 miles, 5.04 miles. It'll be about 5.25 by the time I get back to the car. I climbed about 576 feet. Most of that was climbing Blood Mountain. And it took me about 3 hours and 17 minutes for today. All right.